This is The Extra Mile.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Extra Mile. I'm Caleb Spear along with
G5.
the usual, but also not the usual today. We have a couple of guests with us from the church right here at Milwaukee Avenue in Lubbock, Texas. Lubbock's a fun word to say when you say it like that, Lubbock. And we are with AJ and Miranda Bloodworth. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. AJ is one of the deacons at the Milwaukee Ave COC. And Miranda, we've had on before. This is your second or third?
Third.
Miranda's popular on here.
She is. She's real popular.
Yes. George, what do we got on the table today? Why do we have these two really good examples with us right now?
Yes, we have AJ and Miranda to talk about adoption. And we wanted to start off this, we've kind of started this whole season off talking about communication, how we should communicate with others, but also how we should connect with others. And one of those ways is through adoption, how we connect with the children that we adopt. And they're experts, so we thought we'd bring them on. And they have experience with that. And hopefully we could start this new series where we look at different couples and their adoption experience and the struggles that they went through or the different avenues they went through and what's unique to them. And so we thought we'd bring AJ and Miranda off.
Yes. So Miranda we've had on here. You know what? Some of you probably don't remember. Miranda, you want to give us a 30-second synopsis of how you got to Lubbock, Texas here with AJ? And AJ, chime in whenever you want. It's your guys' story, so that's on both of y'all.
I grew up in Brownfield, which is not very far from Lubbock, and went to Lubbock Christian University, and so that's where we met, and then we stayed here.
Yes, I grew up in Happy and came to LCU, and then I guess last year at LCU we started dating, and the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Done.
Wow. LCU. Yeah, I think I made the joke last time Miranda was on here about classic small Christian school stories, right? You're not there just for degrees sometimes, you know?
You're there to find a partner.
Sometimes. But guess what? Paul says remaining single is a gift in 1 Corinthians 7. So don't stress about it. Don't stress about it, people. George, what do we got on our table here? You were thinking of verses when it came to this subject? What were you
So the
thinking?
big one that came to my mind was the obvious one. It was James 1:27. It says, pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is this, to care for orphans and widows in their adversity and to keep oneself unstained by the world. This understanding of caring for widows, but also orphans as well. And this idea that, you know, God loves us and we should be reflecting that love. And that also means, you know, adopting those that are in need, that don't have a home, don't have a future, that aren't loved or are seeking that, and that we can provide good, godly love in a sense. And so in your guys' experience, you guys look at the Bible, what is your favorite adoption story in the Bible?
Oh.
We'll kind of start off with an easy question. Kind of break.
Is that easy? I can't think of like a lot of.
You can't think of any? I can give you 5. Boom.
Whoa, George saw this. Okay, I guess the question's for you guys though.
So mine, at the moment anyway, is a little unconventional, and that is David and Mephibosheth.
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't even think of that one.
That's a great one.
Wow.
You think about 2 Samuel chapter 9, you know, and here is Mephibosheth, you know, he's crippled in both feet. He's the son of the former king, and he's living in just kind of this remote location, probably not wanting to be known really by anyone.
Yeah.
And then here comes David. He's seeking him out, and then he physically blesses Mephibosheth, you know, with land, with servants. He kind of creates this income stream for him. But then he brings him into his house. He gets to eat with him, you know, day in and day out. And you think about it, Mephibosheth's standpoint, he has done nothing to deserve any of this. This was going back to his father, Jonathan, and David, kind of their bond and their covenant with each other. And yet, as we look at this story, you know, all of us are really the Mephibosheth as we look at, you know, God's grace given to us.
That's so true. And Mephibosheth doesn't know David's intentions at first. It seems like,
Oh, he's probably scared to go.
Right. Yeah, gonna kill me.
Yeah, I like what this is 2 Samuel 9:8. Mephibosheth says, "What is your servant that you take an interest in a dead dog like me?" That's a beautiful story. That's a good one. AJ,
I didn't even think of that.
Miranda, you got a tough one to follow. That was a really good one.
Yes, I do. So my favorite is just our adoption story. I know, you know, we talk about that we were predestined to be adopted, and There's a story in Ezekiel, and it's very graphic, so I didn't want to go into it, but it's just the state that God found us in.
Oh, that's very graphic.
It is,
Yeah.
but I think it's not wrong. And the state that he found us in was not desirable and was not, we were not going to survive. And he said, I will take you and I will care for you and I will provide for you. And that is exactly what he does for us every day.
It is. It absolutely is, right? He is a good God, as it says. So kind of leading into that, what was your experience? Since your story is your favorite, what's your experience with your adoption?
Okay. So as in when we adopted our children, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have done adoption 2 different ways. We it was a private domestic infant adoption. And then we've also done the foster care part of it.
Okay.
So the straight infant adoption was definitely easier. So that process, you just kind of start out, you go to an orientation and you're just there to find information about the agency. Is this who I want to work with? Once you've signed on with them, they'll come to a home study and they're just kind of going through your life with a fine-tooth comb. And just
I bet that's
looking for
nerve-wracking.
issues. Yes, it is. And they tell you don't be nervous. And I mean, we didn't have a lot of issues that needed to be dealt with, but it's still somebody going through your house and your life and your finances and your everything. And then a big part of that after the home study is just the education. So here's classes, here's books you need to read. You're also making a profile book, so you're kind of, I don't know how else to say it except you're trying to sell yourself. You know, you just are putting your best.
A profile book?
A profile book. So
Okay.
it's just a book about us. This is who we are. This is how we met. This is what we want. This is how we live. And then that's what is given to the birth mom.
Yeah.
So she can kind of get to know you a little bit better.
Oh, I see.
And then at the same time, we are deciding, so you can choose gender, you can choose race, you can choose medical needs, you can choose age. So we're just, working on some of those decisions, which is really hard because we want what God wants. But you also need to be honest and recognize we don't feel like we can handle XYZ. And that's okay. And that's what, when we were going through the orientation, they told us, we are not judging you. You need to be honest with what you can take in and what you cannot. Another big decision is the level of openness. So used to all adoptions were closed. The birth parents and the adopted child did not know each other.
Oh, wow.
But now, I mean, you can get together regularly all together.
Wow.
And so anywhere on that pendulum, you can kind of choose where you want to fall. What level of openness do you want to have with the birth family? So that's another big decision. Then your agency, there were several birth moms who received our profile book and that it wasn't a match. But then you finally get the call where, okay, they've matched. Here's the info. So meet with birth mom, birth parents. You're there for, this was our experience. We were there for the birth.
Is it exciting when you get a match and is there hopes are high?
Oh yeah. But I remember too, I was just frozen because you're matched, but then there's just always that, it could fall through. And so I remember standing at the kitchen sink and being like, what did I come here to do? You're just so mentally
It's almost
frozen.
hopeless because there's no guarantee, right? Yeah.
Right. So
there's that possibility that could fall through, that it's not going to work out.
right.
Okay.
So you're just kind of in a waiting stage.
Now, how'd you know when you were ready to adopt? What was that feeling for you? Like,
So I guess we had. I was talking last night with some friends about when we recognized adoption was we always knew adoption was something good to do. But then we moved into, okay, this is something we're going to do. Just hearing somebody else's stories. But it was kind of something that we decided, this is a good thing. This is something we're going to follow through. And then God just was slowly opening that door. And when we finally went and knocked on it, it was wide open. So,
Nice.
real quick though, Beck. So after baby is born, there is a 48-hour waiting period before the termination of parental rights. So that's another hard phase, because you're at the hospital, you're bonding with the baby, but you are also recognizing this may fall through again. I mean, there are lots of places this could fall through, and so
I'm assuming both of you were there for this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what's that conversation like when you're waiting there? Is this just prayer, or is it just kind of like ignore that possibility? How did you guys handle that? I don't know how I would
I
handle
don't know
it
either. It's like walking on glass.
Right. So we were pretty confident that this was going to go through. There were definitely moments when we had reason to believe that it might not. We prayed hard. So God talks about the peace that passes understanding will guard your hearts and minds. He is not wrong. I mean, I feel like he kind of put an insulator on like there were no feelings. Again, with just kind of the frozen, and for me, he was protecting my heart where we were connecting, but maybe it was just kind of on the outskirts of the mind that this could fall through. I do remember when the parental rights were terminated, I just cried and cried and cried. It's so very bittersweet because I needed that to happen, but that was a big deal for her, for birth mom. So anyway, God, if you want to see God do some amazing things, you will when you are adopting. It is very interesting. So then you have 6 months. People are still coming into your home. They're still making sure you're bonding and the baby's being cared for. And then 6 months after the termination of parental rights, you can finalize. So that's the easy way.
Okay, wow.
So you get to talk about that.
That's the easy way, but also the hard way. Yeah.
Yeah.
AJ?
So it was the easier of the two for us. Maybe we should say it like that because that may not be the case for everybody. But
Sure. That makes sense.
Fostering is just a total different ball game because the state's goal is to basically get some relief for that child and then get the parents back up to where they need to be and then stick the child back into that home. That's the goal. And basically, worst case scenario for the state is the child goes to adoption. I shouldn't say worst case, but that's kind of like the lowest priority of the state. And so to me, it's just a whole different mental preparedness that you've got to be is, okay, I've got to love, I've got to attach to this child because that's what that child needs. But then that child will likely not stay in this place in our house forever. And so that's just a whole different level, I feel like, of just being kind of mentally prepared for this.
It's just exhausting giving and taking, giving and taking.
Yeah.
Sorry, quick. I mean, we can just move on if there's no good answer. Like, so is the state trying, giving them somewhat of the benefit of the doubt, trying to just get them back to their original parents, and that's why adoption's at the bottom of the ring, or is there like a whole bunch of legal and financial, like why is adoption like way down the list from the state's perspective?
So no one's really explained it for sure, but I just put myself in the place of the state and, okay, we only have a limited number of caregivers in foster families. So, all right, if we start adopting all these children out to the foster families, there's not going to be more foster families. And so I'm just assuming that they had to come up with a system that gets the child back into their home so they can continue to have these foster families in place.
Okay, I see that. Sorry, that was just...
So I don't know if that's correct or not. That's just kind of the way I look at it.
Well, and I would
Can
say
see that.
there are some situations where when mom and dad get the education and the resources and the help, they are able to parent, and that is what's best.
Oh,
is
sure,
to stay
sure,
at home.
sure.
But, that's not going to be every situation.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
Sorry.
it seems very situational.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anyway, where AJ was, I'm sorry for derailing that.
You're good. So again, like adoption, the fostering also requires all the educational hours. It requires the home study, the background checks, all of that. But then it also, typically you're receiving a child with trauma. And so that changes some things because while a child's still a child, they're not going to think and behave as what, let's just say a child raised from day one in your house is, because they've already had to learn how to cope, and they have already changed their behavior based upon their traumatic events that they have been through.
Sure, they've been guided and probably haven't been through some of the things.
So they've kind of already. So you're having to, it's just a different type of parenting altogether as far as that goes. For our situation, we hadn't had to deal with that as much since we got our child directly from the hospital. But there's still some things different about it. The newborn already had a lawyer. Our other did not. And you still have, two visits a week with birth mom.
Okay.
That you have to keep up with. You have your caseworker in your house, once a month. And then you're kind of at the mercy of the state as far as just how they want to treat all the medical needs of the baby. You don't really get to make any of those calls. It's all dictated by the state. So.
I'm sure it's case by case, like a lot of this is going to be or has been. Visiting the birth mom, for what's that like? What goes on there?
So for us, we would take the child to to a center, and then we would leave the child there for a couple hours while birth mom and baby had the time together, and then we'd be back in the allotted time, and then take the baby back with us, back to the house.
Okay. Again, also probably situational. So in your guys' experience, was there like a decent relationship with the birth mom, or is it kind of awkward in some way, or did they felt like they were being helped? Like, what's people's experience and what's yours with that?
Ours was very different just because we were dealing with a newborn.
Yeah.
I know just hearing stories of older kids, it is difficult because they do want to be with the parent, but being with the parent sometimes drags up the trauma and drags up the memories. And
Gotcha.
So they're kind of coming home in a childlike way, having to deal with what all just got brought up. I recognize the need for the child to see the birth parent, but it was very frustrating. It was very hard. He cried for a lot of the visit, and so I wanted to kind of fight that. This is not healthy for him to be here and crying, but at the same time, it is what it is. It for lack of a better word, we live in a broken world. They are broken relationships. Humans are doing the best they can to figure out how to reconcile this parent-child relationship while at the same time grow this parent-child relationship. So it's just it is going to be rough and frustrating and
Sure.
not pretty.
I think these are deeply rooted human issues that are just problems that I think this is so important, why we need our faith and to kind of get us through some of these things.
The prayer is making me think of some people I know elsewhere who are going through the process, and sure, I knew logically stuff like that's going on, but hearing this background, we need to be really praying for everyone involved in that situation. Everyone.
Yeah, you're dealing with so many things.
And again, I'm sorry, AJ. Another question got in the way, so we'll go right back to where you were.
No, I'm done with that question. So that was kind of my answer to what was your adoption experience.
No, that's fine. So you have two adoptions, two children through two different pathways. What are some? You had a question, Caleb?
No, I was just kind of. Did we ask? How do we were you guys planning to adopt already when you? So what got you? So not even pre-marriage or early marriage, you guys were thinking, what opened that door for you guys seeking this avenue?
I think the Lord changing our hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it really wasn't something that we started our marriage saying, okay, this is our goal is we want to adopt once we get married and get going for a little while. I think the Lord worked on our hearts, and here we are today.
Yeah.
Okay.
He does.
George, where were you going to go?
He takes us down two different pathways. I was just going to say, with two children, two different ways of adoption, what are some of the challenges as you guys raise them, as you guys communicate with them. You said there's trauma. You said there's sacrifice on one side. Do these things come up? How do we deal with these things?
So there's always exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, when you think about this process, you are entering Satan's dominion. And you are basically trying to take a soul out of his dominion into the light, or souls, depending on if you're, trying to adopt a sibling group. And so you got to realize he's not going to give that up without a fight. And I think that's why there's this paper trail that is going to test your patience, as you have all this paperwork you've got to go through, as they look through all your finances, your house, all of this, These are just ways I feel like that Satan is using to try and get you to stop. The birth family suddenly changing their minds is just another tactic that he uses. The cost of adoption. I think all of this is he's trying to discourage us and keep us in our comfort zone. Don't get out of that comfort zone.
Sure, just wear you out with
Yeah.
step after step.
Yeah.
With financial problems, information here, deception. all these.
Right. So I feel like underneath all of this stuff is you got this spiritual war that is taking place, and that definitely is a challenge through the adoption process.
But I guess then you ask, is it worth it? And it is absolutely worth it. Because were you worth it when Jesus did all he did for you?
That's a good point.
Yeah, you were. And that's why he did it. And so that's why we do it.
Man, and that's where you see that gospel message really motivate us. Keep pushing through, keep moving forward, practicing the fruits of the Spirit, like you're saying, patience, I'm sure gentleness and self-control, all of these things. That's really good. Yeah. Any thoughts, Caleb?
No, I just find that's just a beautiful testimony to the gospel.
So you're raising these children here. And how do you talk to them about this? How do you open? Are you closed? Are you How does this
So
work?
our children are still young. And so we just kind of, when they ask a question, we will answer it in an age-appropriate way, but honestly.
Yeah.
And just to make that a part of the conversation. So one of our children, once they knew their story, they went and they were telling their story. And I really appreciated
That's cool.
that the people who heard it honored it and did not dismiss it. Because that is a big part of, just kind of testing this out. I'm going to tell you this about me, and I need to know what you feel about it. And so, as we talk about fostering a culture of adoption, when someone is talking to you about their adoption story, be sure to honor that and to, maybe question about it, just because I think that helps them to know I see that is special is about
So
you.
you could talk to your child in a way, in a sense that that the story actually empowers them and
Right.
helps them move forward.
And we try really hard to reframe the negative. I really wish I was in your tummy. Well, God had a completely different plan for you.
Right.
And it was so special. And do you remember what that was?
Right.
So that it is not seen in a negative way.
Reinforcing the positive.
Yeah,
That's really important.
reframing with God in mind. Yeah,
Right.
what does the big picture look like? What is God's plan here?
I feel like I should be taking
Because even they
notes.
came out of Satan's domain doesn't mean that Satan's not still active. in a sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So keep reassuring God's blessing. The
Yes,
good
because
things.
Satan is after all of our children. He
Right.
just has a little bit different weapon for our adopted children.
Sure.
And he's going to wield it.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Now, you're looking at the way you communicate with your children, kind of your life, direction of your life. Now looking back, how has adoption changed your life, in a sense? Kind of big picture here.
So I always, you just expect, you get married, you have kids, you live life. And I think that if God had done that for me, I would not have seen them as a gift. And that's very heart revealing that I wouldn't have, but it's the truth. This is just what happens. But because of the way our children came into our life, I completely understand these children are not my own. They are from the Lord. 1 Samuel 1:27 is so very popular, and it is for a good reason.
Yeah.
But nobody ever quotes verse 28. So the whole thing says, I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. And then verse 28 says, so now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he will be given to the Lord. And so I think now I recognize that is the Lord gave them to me, and my job is to give them back to him.
That's beautiful.
I also feel like it has changed just my worldview. You know, not everybody has this ideal home life with a mom and a dad and 2.5 kids or whatever it is.
Easily take it for granted.
Easily. And now I'm starting to recognize that is not the case. There are so many kids who need you to take them home.
They need you, that need to hear and see God's love and message in our lives.
Exactly.
Right? We're working that out. I love that story of, that's Hannah, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And she's very open and communicating with her son Samuel and all that stuff, and she understands what's going to happen. She's also deeply connected to God, it seems like, in that relationship there. It seems like that's a healthy adoption process there. And go ahead, Caleb.
I was just going to say, that was an excellent point about,
It really
I've heard
was.
verse 27 a lot. And that's a good verse, but
Yes.
I will now give them away to the Lord. That should be for all parents.
Right.
Right.
What we're doing for our sons and daughters.
Yep. Exactly.
So how do we apply this to our lives, you think, in our everyday lives?
It's a multifaceted
It's a
question.
multifaceted question. I mean, we have our faith, and that faith helps us conquer our day and help us conquer and really in the Satan's domain there, but also strengthens us as well. What do you see? What has your faith helped you, and how can we help others?
Well, it's definitely a journey of growth as we think about the adoption process. I was thinking about how it has helped me learn to trust God. Psalm 124. We also have a song we sing also coming out of this, but if the Lord had not been on our side, the anger of the enemy would have swallowed us alive. We think about that idea of the snare is broken and I have escaped. And really, there's times as we look back on the adoption part of it that we've been through, we definitely feel like we have escaped. And if the Lord had not been on our side, the anger of the enemy would have just destroyed us.
Right.
And so what it's taught us to do is to obviously praise the Lord, but it's also taught us to trust in him. As times get hard, our hope is in him. And another thing that has helped us to do is grow in is our endurance. You know, there's just so many times where the day just did not go the way you wanted to. You know, you drop the child off with birth mom, and the day just did not go the way you wanted it to. Or the court, when we go to court with the child, it just did not go the way we wanted it to. But you got to keep going. You just got to keep going in the process. And I think that builds endurance over time. And that's another key, I think, part that we have brought out of just the adoption process is also just growing in endurance.
That's really good. And I'll leave with Ephesians 1, 4-5. You talked about this, Miranda, at the beginning, but it says, "For he chose us in Christ before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and blameless before him in love. He did this by predestining us to adoption as his legal heirs through Jesus Christ, according to the pleasure of his will, to the praise of the glory of his grace that he has freely bestowed on us in his dearly loved Son." And we see all those themes throughout your guys' story and the conversations we've had. I love your idea of trust. God has opened the door of salvation, right? He's predestined us. It's our choice to walk through that and make that journey and understand, like you were guys saying, through your guys' process of adoption, there will be challenges. There'll be Satan trying to get the best of us. We've got to trust God. We got to push through. And if he's opened that door, he knows, we know that, you know, he wants us to walk through it. And that's going to build endurance. And that's going to be really, really strengthening to us. Really live a life of grace, gratitude.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like what I'm hearing from you guys so much. I love the spiritual emphasis you're putting in this adoption story that's ongoing right now. that you're trying to show your kids, even though they've experienced some trauma and they have some questions and are going to continue with that. You're still trying to show them we can still, because you can trust me, you're giving them a lesson when you guys are trusting themselves or trusting yourselves, that they also can trust God, which made me think of, in line with George's stuff, Galatians 4:6, because we are sons, God sent the Spirit of His Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So that's what I'm hearing the message you guys are doing with your kids, that God's done with us and giving us His Spirit with His Son.
That's a great message. We hope this has helped you guys. I hope encourage you guys, whatever your path is, whatever God wants you to do, and maybe take the next step forward, or to help those in need that have taken the step of adoption as well. They need your encouragement, and we all need to show God's love. Remember to go so, right?
Bye.